Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings NBA Draft YouTube channel. This will not be getting posted as a podcast. This is a YouTube exclusive, very rare, very special. We're just gonna react to the lottery, maybe do a little bit of like some predictive mock draft stuff. We're not deep enough into our evaluations yet to even talk about very much of what we would do, other than right at the very top of the draft. Obviously, we have some ideas, but I just think that this is a chance to just kind of talk generally about the lottery and where things are going. But before we get too into anything, Coop, my friend, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't believe you hate my favorite team, the Utah Jazz. That's really messed up of you, Bryce. This felt like a very moral lottery after last season, which was immoral and disgusting. I think this felt very pure of heart in a lot of ways. It was really refreshing.
Yeah, it felt, the right teams got rewarded, right? But let's just quickly talk about this order, and then we'll just start talking about some drafty stuff. So the first pick goes to the Wizards. I don't know if I would view that as moral. I'm very happy for my good friend Matt Moderno, that his team gets to have a high pick. Now, I think we'll talk about this. I think there's a chance that the number one overall pick in this class is a double-edged sword, but there's a reason that they're looking to trade it. I think there's going to be some really, really interesting stuff. It's very reminiscent of, in some ways it's reminiscent of like what draft was that, 2022, like the Paolo, Jabari, Chet draft. But it's also a little bit reminiscent of 2017 and how it's talked about, where it's like there is a consensus number one, but type of thing. And so we'll have some discussion about that. The Jazz get the number 2 overall pick. They move up 2 spots. Obviously, I'm very happy as a Jazz fan, and I'm very happy. I was texting my dad about this. Very happy that it's not the number 1 overall pick, which I know is weird, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the ups and downs of it. And maybe something important that people are missing. Now, it's not everything, but I do think, we're gonna have some interesting conversation there. The Grizzlies at 3, they move up 3 spots. I'm really happy for the Grizzlies. I think the Grizzlies are an organization that try and do things the right way. I think they have a really fun team. There's also 2 Cougs on that team, WSU Cougs, and so obviously I'm a fan and I'm rooting for them, which is maybe fair, maybe not. But I'm happy to see the Grizzlies bump up there. The Bulls move up 5 spots to go to 4. We're going to talk about this. I think this is really interesting. I think this Bulls team they have a chance to really flip things around and start to head in the right direction. And they have a chance to just kind of stay where they've been for the last bit of time. And so I'm really fascinated to see what they do. The Clippers are at 5, which means the Pacers do not have a lottery pick. Now, I've seen a lot of people clowning the Pacers, and obviously it sucks for Pacers fans. Like, it's fun to have a top 4 pick. It would have been really fun for Tyrese to have a top 4 pick. I'm not willing to call this like a loss of a trade for them. Like, let's see how it looks next year when Tyrese is healthy and you have Siakam and Zubac back. Like, it sucks. Did they lose? Like, they lost like 17 straight games down the stretch of the season to tank to try and get into a position to get a high pick. It sucks for them, but it is what it is. At the same time, I don't think I'm willing to call this a loss of a trade yet, because Ivica Zubac is a really good player, and Tyrese Halliburton, I think, is going to come back ready to help them win again. And so, how much would any of the top 4 guys have helped you win in year 1? I think it kind of depends. The Nets are at 6, the Kings at 7, just the 2 poverty franchises falling just outside of the range that it feels like there's a lot of interest. Now, we're going to talk about, I do think there's some very good players that could fall to them, but still not unnotable to me. The Hawks are at 8. The Pelicans notably traded the 8th pick, and there was another pick that was theirs in some way that they traded to get the 13th pick last year to draft Derek Queen, which is kind of funny. The Mavs are at 9, the Bucks at 10, the Golden State Warriors at 11, the Thunder at 12, another lottery pick for them, and I'm happy for the Clippers to some extent that they get the 5th pick because they obviously no longer get the 12th pick. I think that's interesting. And the Heat at 13 and the Hornets at 14. There's obviously, there's some other interesting teams. The Bulls having another top 15 pick at 15. The Grizzlies back at 16. The Thunder back at 17. And the Hornets back at 18. There's a lot of teams with multiple picks in this stretch, which I find really, really interesting. But we're going to focus mostly on the lottery. And let's talk right at the top. Obviously, we'll end up circling around who we're going to project here. But Coop, when you saw the Wizards got the first overall pick, what were you thinking, and what do you think is going to happen from here?
Well, the consensus on my version of the mainstream is everybody thinks they're going to go with AJ Debonsa. I think he's kind of evened out as the top guy here. We've kind of talked about it a little bit in our group chat, but he's just AJ is an interesting fit with this team. I think it's far more defensible if you have like Trae Young and AD and you're kind of trying to build like a real team. I think that's kind of interesting, like around them, which is kind of funny because they, those are some of the least valued players in the league right now. I think Debonsa makes more sense for that. But if you're looking to like make a real contender in the long term, if you're looking to develop your other players, if you're looking to, let's fit him in with Trey Johnson and Bilal and Keyshawn George and Sarr and like build something for the future and just have AD and Trey here as like the mentors for a season or two, I think this is going to be really wonky. And I do struggle to see that kind of fit. I think the Wizards have so many guys that do nothing but score. Cam Whitmore was already like out of the rotation last season. It's like, are you going to let Trey Johnson's entire development fall by the wayside because you have to feed Darren Peters or AJ Debonsa, 35 usage? I don't know. I think that's kind of wonky. I do think a guy like Peterson would be a more interesting fit. I love Boozer with this core long term. I love him next to Sarr. I do think that the NBA tends to be less single-minded about prospects as like the mainstream makes it seem like they are. Teams have very different big boards. People in the mainstream care a lot more about the Darren Peterson injury concerns than NBA teams do. People in the mainstream tend to think Boozer is far more of a loser and like not a good basketball player than NBA teams do. It's just really hard to get that idea out of your mind, even if it's not. It is hard. The consensus does come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. For what it's worth, every major mock draft, except for Draft Express and Jonathan Gavoni, have the Wizards taking Debonsa. Now, it's already been reported that the Wizards are exploring trade backs. I think Michael Winger is a very intelligent GM. Again, do I love the Trae Young and Anthony Davis moves? No, but they didn't give up a crazy amount for those guys. And I think there was a little bit of hey, you have to be at least try to be a little bit more competent next year. And the more I've thought about it, the more I do kind of like this as a developmental context for AJ, because I think Sarr and Johnson as kind of the prospects to develop alongside him make a lot of sense. You have this 3-and-D big who's not a great rebounder, which is a concern, but is going to cover up for a lot of AJ's weaknesses defensively and can space the floor for him. Trey Johnson, just an elite shooter who I still believe in fairly strongly. I don't think that I do think this will cost Trey Johnson a lot of his on-ball reps. But I also think having someone like Trae Young could be interesting for AJ, and then it might force him to play off the ball. But I'm not fully sold that he's going to completely change their fortune. The question for me is a little bit in terms of developmental context. It's what is Brian Keefe's coaching level, and what is he? He's known as this developmental coach. I've not been crazy impressed with a lot of what they run. But I'm interested. I'm intrigued for this as a fit. I want to talk a little bit about the trade down stuff. I do think there's at least a little bit of AJ's going to go number one, but I don't think on NBA teams' boards he's as much of a consensus number one. Again, it's kind of like this circling sense that a lot of the nerds, just like on draft Twitter, a lot of the nerds that are in NBA front offices really like Cam Boozer, like really do. There's a lot of your grassroots, like high school scouts, really, really like Darren Peterson. There are people who are like Darren Peterson is like one of the best like grassroots high school scorers of all time. There was a reason that he was kind of the number one guy coming into this class, even with AJ and Cam being fairly well known. So I do think there's a little bit of, some like Markelle Fultz to this. Now, I think AJ is both a better prospect than Markelle Fultz. And, again, Markelle Fultz had like a 5th percentile outcome for his talent. Now, he was still never going to be truly worthy of that number one overall pick in that draft. But I do think there's a little bit of that, like, he obviously got hurt by things that were out of his control, or maybe in his control, but not within the control of the team, or however you want to word it, or whatever actually happened there. It's all still kind of floating around. But in the sense that he's the number one guy, AJ is, but he's not like Cooper Flagg last year was the number one guy on everyone's board. People might tell you, well, actually, the Hornets might tell you, Con was always our guy. We always wanted Con Knippel. Sure, Con Knippel, great player. Dylan Harper is going to be a great player. Those two guys, I'm very confident are going to be like all-star caliber players. No one had anyone else but Cooper Flagg one. I don't think that's the case this year. Well, I think AJ is the consensus number one. I don't think he's the ubiquitous number one. And so I think there's at least an intrigue for the Wizards to move back here. Coop, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have any names that you're thinking of guys who might look, or teams that might look to move up, or do you not really have a great feel for that right now?
I mean, according to the consensus, the Jazz, we know their owners entranced with AJ Debonsa, paid how much money for him to go to BYU. That could be a huge thing. I think the Bulls could be interesting. I think being like, this is our best shot at getting a true superstar. Let's go in, even if they're just trading up to 1 or 2, even I think taking that leap into the top 3, potentially overpaying maybe with someone like a Sangay or whatever other assets they have to make that step up. I think that could be huge for them. I do think like the Clippers or the Nets, other teams that just like don't have that future and just need the swing at like, we need a guy desperately. I think those teams could be huge. And potentially moving into the top 3 would be too smart for the Kings. So they're not going to do it.
So I'm going to throw a couple teams out there that I think are the most realistic in terms of, I think they have the capital. So the Jazz for sure, right? 2 plus a future first probably just gets it done, would be my guess. Maybe they have to attach a Sensabaugh or a Collier or a Filipowski or whoever the Wizards think is like really worth it. 100% makes sense. I think the Grizzlies make a lot of sense as 3 and 16 and maybe a second to get to move up. The Nets, I just don't think are going to have the capital. I think they would want to. I think they would kill to trade up. I don't like. They're already out quite a few first round picks. Like I just think they're in too tough of a spot. I actually think that the Kings are really happy at 7. I don't think they're really dying to move up. I think they're kind of whoever falls to us, great. Like, I think for what it's worth, like as much hate as that franchise gets, I think there's some understanding right now that they're not like a 1 year, one guy fix anyways. I think, it would have to be through some type of like circuitous means, but I think there's a world that the number 1 overall pick is involved in a Giannis trade. I don't think it would be Giannis to the Wizards. Maybe. I don't know. Trae Young, AD, and Giannis on a team. How crazy would that be? I think it's more of like some type of 3-team deal where now Giannis has been specific that he wants to be on the East Coast. My guess for Giannis is maybe it's Philly, maybe it's New York. It could even be Brooklyn involving the sixth pick. We'll see. I mean, maybe the Heat, but what I'm saying is through some type of circuitous means, Giannis is traded, and the main return of a package is the number one overall pick. I think that's in the cards. But I think overall this is going to end up being kind of a smokescreen, and that the Wizards are going to stay at 1 and they're going to draft AJ DeMonson. That's my pick. Coop, as we're thinking about consensus upside swings mock draft, do you agree with that, or do you have pushback? What do you think happens here at 1?
I'm going to lean on the fact that I think I trust the Wizards front office. I think they're going to end up with Darren Peterson. I think that would be my guess.
At 1 or at with the trade back?
I'd say they trade back. I think they trade back with the Jazz. I think owner pressure is a lot. I know that would be hard for you as a fan, but like $8 million to go to BYU for a season is like, obviously he's a billionaire. It's not like that's the amount of money it is to us, but that's where there's smoke, there's fire there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can agree with that. So let's lock that in. But then I do want to talk about the Jazz. Here's the interesting thing for the Jazz. Carlos Boozer does work in the Jazz front office and has for the last year, and has been at every single Duke home game. And if you look up what does Carlos Boozer do for the Jazz front office, it says his work primarily surrounds the NBA draft. I do think there's a little bit of the owner in Utah really wants AJ. I am not sure that Ainge and that front office are dying for AJ. I think about the players that Danny Ainge valued and the type of things he looked for. I think Carlos Boozer fits that a little bit more than AJ DeMonsa. I just there's something to, blue blood program, consistent winner, long track record of success, high level playmaker. I just, truthfully too, like Carlos, excuse me, I'm going to keep doing that. You should have named your kids with the same first letter as you. Like that's so annoying. Cam is such an obvious, like, modern NBA fit in that, like, he's this high level passer, big physical bruiser. And I mean, this is the most, if you guys are watching the playoffs right now, the most physical the league has been in a long, long time. I mean, I even think about that Wemby ejection last night. He was literally had 2 hands wrapped around one of his arms as he threw his elbow. Right now, the league level of physicality is crazy. And Cam feels like such a great fit in that. And so I do think there's at least a little bit of that front office. I think if the Jazz stay at 2, so a lot of these mocks, and these are guys I want to say, like, I'm not one of those people anymore I used to be where it's like I don't like consensus. I think all these consensus guys are so annoying or whatever. Like, truthfully, a lot of the consensus guys I didn't love have kind of been phased out, and other than like Kevin O'Connor, I think a lot of these guys do great work. Like at SB Nation, it's Ricky O'Donnell, who is just like one of the best humans like on the planet, and I think he does excellent work. He has Darren Peterson at 2. Jeremy Wu has Peterson at 2. Gavoni again has Peterson at 1, so it's a little different. He has AJ at 2. Finkelstein has it as Peterson at 2. And who else is this? Wasserman has it as Peterson at 2 as well. So all those guys have Peterson at 2. I'm planting my flag here that if it's the Jazz at 2, I think it's Boozer. If the Jazz move up, obviously they're going to take DePonsa. I feel very strongly that the order is DePonsa goes 1, and then the rest is fairly open. But if the Jazz are at 2, I think Boozer goes 2. Does that kind of make sense?
I think that's fair. I do think that Boozer as like this front court playmaker next to Jaren and Laurie is so beautiful. And the Jazz also hate.
It makes me so happy. Like, it's unbelievable.
They also, like, the Jazz hate guards that can actually make plays for other people other than Collier. And I think that they want more of that from their front court. And I think Cam Boozer fits into that perfectly. And they haven't really found that engine for their team yet. I think it could be Cam.
Yep,
So
I agree. I also think he'd be such a good fit with if you're going to make Keontae work, you need players like Cam Boozer. He would also probably allow you to uh, do the front court rotation of he plays with Jaron and with Walker Kessler. You know, I have my concerns with Cam. Like again, I've said this. I don't think he's the tier of guy as Cooper Flag was. Coop, you made a very coherent argument that you think he could be or is, and I think that's great. I don't think he's quite to that level, but to me, he's still the highest star bet in this draft. But with what we've done, the Jazz trade up, I do think the Wizards at 2 would take Peterson. Do you agree with that, Coop?
I do. I think that would be their guy. I think they love these skinnier athletes. And Peterson would be, I mean, so talented, such a fun fit with the young core and with like wanting to win now with his gravity. I think that's such an easy win there for them, which leaves us with Memphis at 3.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think ideally they do get Cam Boozer. I think
Yeah.
the nerds in that front
Mhm.
office. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, the nerds in that front office would love to get Cam Boozer on their team. This guy who's analytically one of the most dominant freshmen of the last however long. You watch him play, and he's also absurdly dominant in so many ways. Just a truly special player. My favorite player in this class. If I was with the Wizards, I'd be happy to just take him at 1 and move on. But I think the league really struggles with these bigs who aren't the best defenders. And that is Boozer's big worry is he's not this super dominant defender. I do think he's maybe the most offensively dominant player we've scouted in the entirety of our time doing this. He's so unimpeachable in that way. And I think Memphis would be so happy to get him here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this happens. I will say my hot take for this pick is that if Boozer is gone, that it's not Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson just really doesn't feel like a Grizzlies guy to me. Like he does not feel in their range what they like. I think if Peterson is on the board and Boozer is gone, that they take Caleb Wilson. I think if Boozer's here, like we're saying, then I think they draft Boozer. And I think this is the most A1 perfect fit, no questions asked in the draft. I think you have a core of Coward, Boozer, Edey, and again, I still like Jalen Wells as like your front court guys. You know, I think that's great. I think they're in a really great spot. I'd be laughing to the bank if I was the Grizzlies and I could get Boozer at 3. And again, in a different world, I would be doing a lot of what it would take to trade up to 1 to get Cam Boozer. Like I think he's such a good fit that I would be doing what I could to secure him. But I think they're going to be able to sit here at 3 and probably just take him. At 4 with the Bulls, do you think this is Caleb Wilson for what it's worth?
Knowing the Bulls, I do think it's Caleb Wilson. I think it's really hard. There's also I don't know. There's so many people who have Wilson in this they want to be hot takes, and it's oh, he's above Cam Boozer. That athleticism is too much. I feel like you have to go in and get Matas a real guard. Get a guy who you can run actions with Matas and get out and run. I think they should go Kingston Flemings here at 4. I think Flemings really pushing the pace, really getting out in transition, playing good defense at the point of attack, being more of a second side attacker while still getting some real point guard reps. He gets the point guard job here at the Bulls. I think that would be beautiful, but I don't know. It's hard to see them going anywhere but Wilson or maybe even an A cuff if they're really into his rise.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel pretty strongly, and this, that this should be that I believe this should be Keaton Wagler. Coop, they're going to listen to this before our Wilson thoughts. I don't want to get too into it. I want you guys to listen. I think the Wilson pod is one of the best we've recorded. We are just lower on him, which is, I know everyone's always we were once upon a time, we were the long stringy forward pod, but we're just lower on Wilson. But I do think he goes here. And again, I don't think that this is some horrendous pick. I don't think this is truly like a Patrick Williams level disaster. And in fact, my guess is that this front office would probably be scared to take a reach like a Keaton Wagler, because people forget Patrick Williams was like a reach. Like, he was not projected to go that high until like 2 days before the draft. I think, was it still Schmitz or was it Gavoni by that point, reported like, I think I think that's going to happen. So anyways, I do think that's interesting. We'll speed up a little bit here. I know that this was supposed to be a really short one, and we've kind of gone a little bit long. And truthfully, we're kind of reaching the end of, like, we for sure scouted all these guys. Coop, any thoughts on the Clippers at 5 and what they might be doing here?
I just don't think they can go with another small guard. Garland is so small. Even if you're not fully committed to him long term, he's going to be hard to flip. You are kind of stuck with him for for the foreseeable future here. I don't know.
Like that kind of. Do you think this is where we see like the first big surprise of the draft? Because it feels like this is like everyone is like, okay, this is probably just where Kingston Flemings goes, Ricky has Wagler here. ESPN, I think, has Wagler here. So it feels like it's either Kingston Flemings or Keaton Wagler. Do you feel like they will change and maybe go for someone like a Lendenborg, or what do you feel like is going to end up happening here?
I have genuinely, this is like, I have no clue. I'm going to take a shot in the dark here. I think there's a world Immense or Burries goes this high. I think one of them goes before Lendenborg. Especially with how bad at drafting the teams are in this range. The Clippers are the worst drafting organization in the NBA. If you go back and look at it, obviously they haven't had any good picks, but every single draft pick they've had has been a whiff. So I'll say they go with Immense, just this lankier, high potential, quote unquote guy here at 5, and just like take a huge swing.
I'll match you, because I like this, because I do think Amanda is someone who could just have like a great workout where he shoots like 48 of 50 on their star shooting or whatever. And they're like 6'10", and he's doing that, and they take him, and they don't we haven't got too into Amanda. Like, I don't like him a lot from what I've seen so far. I think he's kind of exactly the type of guy that I'm like historically, like I always fade these like, shot reliant, except for Zaire Williams, who burned me. But these like outside shot reliant, skinny, not athletic playmakers. It's just a no for me. But I'm with you. I think this is where we do see a surprise. Okay, the Nets at 6. What are your thoughts here?
I think this could be the Kingston Flemings, Keaton Wagler spot. I think they would actually go Wagler. I think he fits.
I think this is Wagler. I think this is Wagler. I think this would be a great pick for them to take Wagler.
He'd be their best prospect by like a country mile.
Yeah, and I like Flemings here too. For what it's worth, like I think both would be very reasonable picks. I prefer Wagler personally. I think Wagler is more likely to go higher. From what I'm hearing right now, just that the Nets might have their own personal board that's different, but I just think that it's more likely that it's Wagler if he falls this far. If not, if one of them is gone, I think they just take the other one, is my guess. Some people are going to say Acuff here. I think Acuff will not go this high. But I do think that Acuff will go with the next pick to the Sacramento Kings.
I was going to say that exact thing.
Even if Wagler or Flemings was here, I think this is Acuff. And I think, truthfully, I think this is something that you're going to hear a lot. Like, the Sacramento Kings are in love with Darius Acuff. He's exactly their kind of guy, for good and for bad. I think he could have an okay career here. Obviously, I'm not very high on Acuff. I don't think this would be a good pick. If what is important to evaluating this pick is the number of all-star games this guy makes, then I'm sure this will be a great place, because I bet you he can have a couple Domantas Sabonis level seasons here. And that would be really great for him. I don't think this is a place where he just completely flames out, probably, but this just feels right. So that's our top 7. We have it as AJ DeBosa to the Jazz, Peterson to the Wizards, Cam Boozer to the Grizzlies, Caleb Wilson to the Bulls, Nate Ament is the surprise pick to the Clippers, Keaton Wagler to the Nets, Darius Acup to the Kings. Coop, who do you think goes here at 8 to the Hawks?
The Hawks are laughing all the way to the bank with Kingston Flemings, right? Like that's what happens if some, if Wagler, I think if an A-Cuff falls past the Kings and Wagler and Flemings are gone, they just want that guard. They want that guy they can plug in with their wings.
100%. I think this is a guard play. And now I think this could be Michael Brown Jr. I think this is like the top end of the range for LeBaron Philon. I think all types of guys could go here. I like Flemings. I would love Philon here. I think Philon would be really, really great if he could make it on the Hawks. But I agree. I think they're so happy with how this draft worked out because I think they're really coveting a guard. And so I just think they're going to be really happy with whichever one is on their board that's left. There's probably going to be one or two that they don't like, and I don't know who that is yet. Maybe it's Acuff and Brown they just don't like, and they won't take those guys. But the other three they do, and whichever one is there, they'll probably just take. Is my feeling. But we have it as Flemings. Would you be happy to see your Houston Coug in Atlanta?
I think it would be a good spot for him. I think go in, get to play with a young, fast team. I think he's a good transition player. I do selfishly think Michael Brown, like running transition off of like Dyson Daniels steals and like with Jalen Johnson, is that the best transition duo like in the league, like off rip?
Probably.
Like incredible. But I do think Flemings could do like a good imitation of that. He was good when the Cougs did push the pace, which was not often. But I think he has the athleticism and stuff to go and do that.
They have a lot of guys who are really great defensive playmakers and still no one who's a very good one-on-one on-ball defender. This would just be the havoc-wreaking team of the world here. The Mavericks here at 9, I think this is a really interesting spot. I think this is probably about the start of the Lendeborg range. Again, I mentioned him at 5. I'd be pretty shocked if he goes at 6, 7, or really even 8, even as good as the Hawks are. I don't think they go Lendeborg. That wouldn't surprise me as much, but the Mavericks I could really see going with him. I could see this being LeBaron Philon spot. I could see this being, maybe taking a bigger swing like a Michael Brown. Where are you at? What do you think happens here with the Mavericks?
I think this is where the draft gets really hard because the Mavs, I think, are going to feel a lot of pressure to get a running mate for Flag. And I think all the really good ones are gone unless you like me, like you love Philon. And I don't know if the Mavs are smart enough or good enough at drafting to love Philon.
Well, and that's the other thing that's hard to say is this is now Masai Ujiri. And so it's really hard to think about like, okay, well, what Masai values has historically been very different from not only what you'd expect, but also like what this current draft has. I want to throw out a couple other names. Out there. I think Braden Burries is going to get brought up as kind of a type of fit as like an off-guard shooter. I think that Ademara, this is the start of his range. As weird as that might sound to some, I think he's going to go way higher than people expect. He has the exact type of mold. Zach Edey went way higher than people expected. And then I could also see this being like a really weird swing, like a Kareem Lopez, or I guess you could call Ademara weird. Like a Jaden Quinton. So is this too high for him? Like, I don't know. I think this is one that could go in a lot of different directions. My gut here tells me that this is Brown. I just think that he's kind of, in the end, there'll be a default to best available, plus he's like a bigger guard, which is something that Masai has seemed to value. Does that seem right to you, or is there someone else who really stands out as you think that's the guy?
That works for me. I think if Ament is here, I think that's the guy. Like I think if he's available, that is the most Masai guy left on the board. I think like Sanak could be a Masai swing, but this is kind of too high for him.
For what it's worth, I would not be surprised if this is a trade, especially with the Clippers, to maybe get up into that Wagler Flemings even a cuff range. And if the Clippers' eyes are on Ament, maybe thinking they could get him more at this range, that's kind of something I'm eyeing, is that potential trade there. I don't know exactly what that looks like. Obviously I doubt it'd be like Kyrie, but maybe like a Daniel Gafford type, who I know the Clippers have, coveted a center like that for a while. But I think Michael is my guy here.
That's good for me.
Yeah, 10, the Bucks, and I think this is really interesting. Again, I think this pick is probably moving in some way, in that I think the Bucks are probably trying to move up. But it sounds like Giannis is going to get traded this offseason. And so they're in a really interesting spot. If you're going to trade Giannis, Coop, who are you going with? Who are you thinking they might try to go with it?
Well, for my board, other than Yaxel, but I don't think they take a 23-year-old here at 10. The youngest, highest star swing is Phylon. I think you can really talk yourself into him and Rollins in the backcourt. Just like these guys who can really get after it together. They score in different ways. I think they have different styles, but I think that they could really push each other. I think that could be really fun. Maybe you take the huge swing on untapped potential with a Steinbach or acquaintance. I don't know. I think even a Koa Pete, is that crazy? It's another huge athlete. I don't really know where his range is at this point, but just going after, the Buck style, let's go out and get our next swing at a star, and not understanding what that is.
I think this is probably Adamara. The more I think
that would be crazy.
I think he's going to go high. And this is the team that drafted Thon Maker at 10 after all. Obviously different. But I think you're talking about star bets. You're talking about convincing yourself. It could be Steinbach. It seems like his star is kind of faded. I'd be shocked if this is the team that's like, let's draft Braden Burry super high. I just think Mara makes so much sense here, for good and for bad. I haven't done my deep dive on Mara. I don't think I will be this high on him. But you could see that if you're like, hey, we just traded Giannis and we have no offensive hub now. Okay, well, let's see. Does a Ryan Rollins, Ade Mara pick and roll, and does a lot of Ade Mara chin action stuff, him posting at the elbow and running a lot of off-ball action off of him, can that work? I don't know. That's my go-to here. Is there anyone who you feel strongly that they'd be taking over him?
Not really. I think Ade Mara is a fun, teams love tall guys. They just do. That works for me. Which brings us up to the Warriors at 11.
I think this is one or two guys.
Who are your? I think it's either Burries or Yaxel.
Okay. Yaxel's interesting. I was thinking Burries or Phylon.
Yeah, that's the third guy, but I think that they just don't. I think they're still burned.
This team has so many shooting guards. I think Yaxel's an interesting name. I feel like they're wary of taking an older, quote unquote, ready to play guy, and then Curry being 38. What is it like when Curry's finally done? Yax is already 28, 27, 28. Is that really what they're wanting to do? Now Curry did just sign an extension. I think Yax will make some sense, but I also wonder if they're going to try and do some 2 timeline stuff. But if they do, is Burries really the guy? I'm not sure, because they have so many shooting guards on this team. This team is literally shooting guards the team. It's kind of crazy. So do you feel strongly for Yaxel or Burries here? Or, is there one guy who you just feel like is way more likely? I think both have their problems with fit here, obviously. And again, we haven't put this pod yet. We really love Yaxel, and this would be a steal of a steal to get him here. But just in terms of their thinking, is there anything that stands out to you?
I think Burries goes here. I think teams love these ready to play younger guards like this, off guards.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we don't super love him, you can go watch our Burries pod. I think we're pretty fair with our feelings on Burries. He's good. Is he the guy you want to take after tanking a whole season and not even making the play-in? No, I doubt it. So I think here at 11, Burries is interesting, which then moves us to like the scariest pick that seems to be chalk everywhere with the Thunder here at 12. In my nightmares, I see them taking Yaxel. Everyone seems to see them taking Yaxel. He's just so good. Yaxel's so damn good. And if the Thunder get him, I will be actively pissed off.
This will be Yaxel. If he's here, I don't think there's any way it's not. Like, truthfully, like, if he's around, the Thunder will take Yaxel. So that feels as set in stone to me as anything in this draft. Now, I think the odds that he's here are maybe a little low. Like, I think there's a lot of teams we talked about earlier that could convince themselves again. I think his range starts at 5. And there's a couple teams that I think there's no chance they pick them, but 8, 9, 11, 12 all make a lot of sense for Yaxel. And again, teams can trade up, whatever. Like, I just think this is a team people will covet. This is a person certain teams will covet. But if he falls to 12, I think he will be drafted here. 2 picks left, the Heat and the Hornets. And I think this is where we truly enter the Wild West. Maybe this is a hot take. I think this is the top 12. I think these 12 guys will, in some order, be the first 12. The only question is maybe Mara. But I feel the more I've kind of spent time around this, the more I feel like he will end up going in the top 12. I do think this is where it completely opens up, and it's the Wild West. I mean, Steinbach has been brought up as a guy at 13. Quintins could be a guy at 13. I could see this being a co-Pete destination. Philon is still around. So maybe he's the guy who we left off. Maybe I should say that. But then again, are the Heat I'm dying to take LeBaron Philon? I don't know. I think we should probably draft him here because I think that does make a lot of sense if he falls this far. So maybe I shouldn't have been so declarative. But I'm also just, what team is for sure going to take Philon ahead of the guys that they have? The Thunder are definitely not taking Philon over Wendenborg. Maybe Golden State, like we said, maybe the Bucks could convince themselves. But the truth is there's so many guards on this ring around the Rosie that one of them is going to fall. I think there's a chance that Philon or Michael probably are the two that would fall. That one of them is the 17th pick. And we're just what the hell happened here? Because there's all these guards that just, we're eventually going to get to a point where it's Golden State is I don't need a guard. OKC definitely doesn't need a guard. The Heat kind of do, and so I think it makes sense. But again, this is not a sure thing for me. Are you with Philon here?
I'm fine with Philon here. I think actually Philon could only fall to 14. I think he is the most Hornets player of all time with what they like to do right now. Just get shots up, play smart. I think he's a better defender than any of their main 3 players. But move Con to the 3, Melo, Philon, Con, Brandon Miller. Is that the greatest non-Golden State shooting team of all time? I think there's a real argument for that. I think if he's not there, in this exercise, I think at 14, the Hornets are really interesting because they could go any which way. I think they would then go CNAC. I think CNAC spacing the floor, in theory, at least, take that swing on a 5 who can rebound. He's a very strong defensive rebounder. Get him in there. He's a project. And he will just at least pretend to space the floor and pretend to draw a closeout, which will then open up your driving lanes more, open up, you still have all this shooting. I think they could talk themselves into that and him really fitting their new identity.
That's definitely fair. I do think, for what it's worth, this is the floor for Mara. I do think Mara, if he's here, 15 goes to 14. I just think this is a team that's there's a real actual center we can take. Well, let's take him. Because this draft is very, center empty. Again, there are all types of names I could go with here. And I don't really have a great feel for what.
Wait, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
If the Hornets trade up for Yaxel, is that one of the I'm imagining him at the 4, for this team, moving guys around.
I love it. I think at a certain point you have to get a point guard who actually cares.
But
obviously
that's what you have Yaks for. Spoiler alert for the
that's what I mean.
Yaks pod that comes out.
He's such a funny fit because Yax and Khan, for lack of a better phrase, are such serious basketball players, and even to an extent, like Diabate and Kalkbrenner and even Kobe White for his issues, like they're all just such like those are real like serious basketball
And
players.
what's the Duke player who's from last year, whose name I'm forgetting?
Oh, Sion.
Yeah, Sion James. Like, there's so many serious guys, and then you have Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller, and LaMelo Ball
And
on
even
the other
Brandon
end.
Miller, like when you watch him anymore, feels a little bit more like a real player. He just can't score inside the arc right now to save his life,
Yeah.
and that's always been his problem. But remember, people tried to tell you that pull up midi was like going to be something crazy elite. Yeah, whatever. I like Brandon Miller fine. Again, our hate for him was probably overdone, but he's also like still not that good. Let's relax. But even he can be a serious player, and it's just like, but at a certain point, you have LaMelo Ball at the center of all of this, and I just like a part of me is like I would trade LaMelo Ball and just see what value I could get out of him, but I'm also a hater, so whatever. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if they could get Yaks on this team, that'd be great. I'd love that. All of a sudden, you have just a really, good, solid core of your 2 through 4 are 3 good shooters who can at least approximate solid defense, and a couple of them are pretty good rebounders, a couple of them are pretty good playmakers. Like that's a really good core to eventually bring either a star big or a star guard into. I'm good with CNAC here. I think that's a perfectly reasonable. I think their head is probably going to be big, 4 or 5 type. So
Could
I
this
think
also
that
be the Merez Johnson landing spot if he
yeah,
sticks in that?
this could be the we go really high on a guy. I think this could be Steinbach again. His star feels like it's fallen a little bit, but a team that is like, hey, maybe we have a bit of a usage hole at center, and we just need someone who can, actually do some stuff here. Could be interesting. I still have to watch Steinbach more. I don't have a great feel for him right now in terms of what he actually brings and what he's good at. I think the thing that some people realize, and even we, to an extent, talk about this too much, like so often we think about things positionally, and lots of times NBA teams are thinking about these things through the lens of a skill. We need a specific skill filled by someone of a reasonable size approximation to this position, not we need a quote unquote point guard, because Kingston Flemings and Darius Acuff are completely different players in terms of what they're actually going to bring to the floor, even if they play the same position. And so NBA teams are rarely thinking about it as binary point guard, shooting guard, small forward as much as we do. And again, even in our conversation, it's easy to say that. But my guess is that the Hornets are looking for from their big spot, someone who can help ease some of the playmaking load in half court offense. Someone who can continue to be a good offensive rebounder, though they get that from Diabate, so it's not the end of the world. And then probably ideally someone who could potentially play next to one of those other 2 bigs in certain units, and so it's more of like a 4 or 5 than just like a pure 5. Now again, if Mara is here, I think they take Mara because he's just such a he fills that first role so comfortably. But this is a team that does kind of need, a little bit more half court decision making. They're a really good transition team, and they were a solid half court offense this year because they shot the shit out of it. But I think they're a team that needs a little bit more organization, and I also think that they're probably like, for us, the path to being good on defense is just finishing possessions. It's never going to be like, truly elite, like fly around defense or lockdown defense. Like that's just not the personnel we have. And so they're probably thinking a lot more about rebounders. So I do like CNAC here. I think he makes a lot of sense in that in terms of what he brings. I still have to watch him a little bit more to get a feel for exactly who he is as a player, but good rebounder, can block some shots, conceivably can space the floor. I think he's really far away from what I've seen, but makes some sense. And there's a lot of other guys. Again, we have a lot of work to do. There's going to be guys that we're really high on that we haven't talked about yet. But we went way longer on this than we expected. I'm going to quickly read back the lottery, and then Coop, I will let you get out of here so your wife doesn't cut your head off. We only did 1 trade. There will probably be more trades. AJ DeBonsta to the Utah Jazz. They trade up. We did not do the specifics. It doesn't really matter. Darren Peterson at 2 to the Wizards. Cam Boozer at 3 to the Grizzlies. Caleb Wilson at 4 to the Bulls. At 5, our first surprise pick, Nate Ament to the Clippers. At 6, Keaton Wagler to the Nets. At 7, Darius Acup to the Kings. At 8, Kingston Flemings to the Hawks. At 9, Michael Brown Jr. to the Mavericks. At 10, Ade Mara. He's our surprise pick. He goes to the Bucks. At 11, Braden Burries to the Golden State Warriors. At 12, Yaxel Lindenborg to the Thunder. At 13, LeBaron Philon to the Heat. And at 14, Chris Senack to the Hornets. This has been great. Thank you all for watching and listening. Stay tuned. We're going to have a couple more YouTube exclusive videos, but we're also going to be posting a pod on a couple really high level guys, Caleb Wilson and Yaxel Lindenborg. Stay tuned for that. Subscribe, leave a comment below, share this if you'd like. We'd love to get a little bit more juice out there. Starting to heat up and ramp up, but it can be slow going at times. But this has been awesome. Coop, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you guys later.